as a trader, it almost becomes, why am I giving so much of my money away when I can be a part of a team in an effective tax jurisdiction? You're making 7 figures in Cyprus. You're taking home 90% of that $1 million. I'm a 7-figure trader, but we'd like to check that in is, well, how much of that are you taking home?
Alex, are you really a 7-figure trader if you're living in New York City, Chicago, London, or Frankfurt?
I think this question and why you get these migration routes of traders, and it's been happening for the last 20 years, seeking, especially when traders start making money, accumulating money. In the beginning, when they're not making money, your tax jurisdiction doesn't really matter. And you're starting to get, with the technology leap that's happening around the world, access to low latency internet. Elon Musk has his plans to help, spread access to the web, to technology across the world, where even if you're in West Africa, you'll probably be able to trade on the DOM in the future. And so that path, what are traders doing when they make their money and making tax jurisdiction calls, whether it's the Cayman Islands or anywhere else across the world. But what does it actually happen? And I know you have the facts. What is it that you're actually clearing in the certain hubs, the trading hubs of the world?
Yeah, it's great. I went for a big deep dive on this. And so I'll do a breakdown and we'll use $1 million because it's a nice round number to kind of split up. If you're living in New York City, we'll start there. At the end of the day, you've banked 1 million profit. You'll be netting 386,000. That's what's going to be left. That's shockingly huge, right? London, moving on. You'll be netting 455,000 or less, depending on your non-dom status. Frankfurt, 501,000. Florida, 561,000. So huge differences with what you're actually left with as bottom line. In Cyprus, however, you'll be able to be left with a net figure of $870,000. It's a huge comparison.
So you are actually a 7-figure trader in Cyprus versus if you're making 7 figures in New York, you're a multiple 6-figure trader.
Basically, yeah. The comparison, comparing Cyprus to New York, is just absolutely huge in that sense. But is it really all just about taxes here?
I mean, and this is a golden question, Peter, because if I rewind back to around 20 years ago, when all of a sudden a few jurisdictions started having more access to the exchanges in various different regions of the world, in around 2006 and 7, I remember a group of traders at the trading firm that I was trading at made a lot of money, made multiple millions, giving a lot of that to the tax man, and then moving to areas such as Dubai, such as Gibraltar. Gibraltar was a big one, and various other locations, even Mauritius. Setting up those jurisdictions. The Caribbean and BVI and Caymans was a little bit more challenging because the technology wasn't quite there. You didn't have, you'd have to send a pigeon. When you clicked your order, you'd have to send a pigeon across to the exchange to execute the trade. And so back then, when these traders started making moves, they hit their career heights from where they were prior. And if you're not going to be making money in a tax jurisdiction, 0% of nothing doesn't really matter. And so what was happening is that these traders who had developed their craft, had cultivated, edge in the market, made the moves because they now wanted to save on the tax. They'd make some money for a period of time, but what they never anticipated, because the education wasn't there at that time, they were probably the Christopher Columbuses of moving to these new jurisdictions, but they didn't realize that the previous firm that they're at, the previous collective team that they were around, they were a product and a function of their growth, was a function of the growth of their team. And this is a large element of and I truly believe this, you're only as good as the growth of the team around you. You will grow if there are people around you who are growing. Whereas when you now start going on your own to a summary location, such as Gibraltar, such as Dubai, what was happening 20 years ago, and there were many traders, many top traders leaving to these areas, and they hit a plateau. And one of the reasons is that they stopped being as professional as they were in a cold climate. London, New York, they would go to the golf course if they had a tough day, whereas in London, they're sitting at their desk. And so this pattern, over 5-6 years, those traders were at their top and never reached their top again, and actually never really made money again. And so it was almost this curse to these tax jurisdictions. And so the more important question is, if you're going to a tax jurisdiction, make sure you've taken care of the other part, which is plugging into a team of high performers. And that is so important. And with one of our lead traders, the collector from Traders of Our Time, when we had our discussion about opening up Cyprus, we've mentioned this before in our past YouTube videos, is the importance of learning the lessons of those that went before us to these summer frontier tax jurisdiction climates, to ensure that they were plugging into a team, they were being professional, they were doing the same hours that you do in London or New York or in Chicago. And if you could birth a team, and we have technology now where you cannot see the difference on the screen, you have this type of new lifestyle. And so the most important before the tax consideration is, am I going over to a tax jurisdiction where I am a singular entity? Or am I going over to a tax jurisdiction where I'm part of a collective, competent performance team? And so that's what was structured in Cyprus, the Cyprus 4 that you lead and run. And if we look at that, why is Cyprus, I've been living here for the last couple of years. If I were to ask you, what are some of the features if you have a good team? Because, and again, traders stay in New York because there are great teams in New York. There are great teams in Chicago. There are great teams in London. And so if you're making $1 million there, and maybe you're only netting $350,000 in New York, if you were to go to the Cayman Islands or some other jurisdiction, you're probably going to make maybe the next year 600,000, maybe the next year 300,000. So over time in New York, you would have still made more over a period of a decade, and in London, because you're in with a good team. Whereas you move to that jurisdiction, slowly your career declines. And it declines slowly in the beginning until it becomes a very accelerated, slippery slope. And so the team is important. And that's, at Axia, when we decided to open up a floor in Cyprus, we needed to start with a team. And bar the great tax, and if you're making 7 figures in Cyprus, as you mentioned, you're making literally 90%. You're taking home 90% of that $1 million. So if you wanted to kind of classify, you get this all over the Twitter sphere, the YouTube world. I'm a 7-figure trader, but we'd like to check that in. Is, well, how much of that are you taking home? And the important consideration is team. And why? What is it that now do we feel why most people, why that we're having a huge movement of traders moving to Cyprus from all regions, from France, from Germany, from the UK, specifically a certain demographic, North London Cypriots.
Like myself.
Yeah, and you're part of them. And what is it that Cyprus offers? I have some of my views, but I know you've been living here longer than I have.
Yeah.
So what is it that you feel is Cyprus, and you're a father of 2 beautiful children, what is it that Cyprus offers?
So, externally, away from the floor, Cyprus is, for me, almost that in-between way of living that we've kind of almost lost, in my opinion, in big cities like London, because you can get so caught up in the daily routine, as we all know, that kind of daily grind, Whereas with Cyprus, when it does come to the weekend, which we also know is a huge part to our traders' development and their rejuvenation, and now they're kind of taking themselves away and just kind of almost getting into that meditative state to improve the performance of the following week, is you've got so many good options. You've got the beautiful weather, for example, 300 days of sun. You've got wonderful infrastructures in place like the schooling systems, so many international schools. You've got huge expat hubs placed all over, especially in places like Limassol. You've got an active lifestyle, again, to do with the weather. You've got so many outdoor activities. For the kids, for me, where I've got my 2 children, it's always a case of, oh, what can we do this weekend? Not what are our very few options, because there's so many beautiful and amazing things to do. And of course, a professional infrastructure, especially in a place like Limassol where we are, you have businesses of all sorts from all sorts of, all corners of the globe almost coming to Limassol. And of course, the location, I think, is incredible to where we are placed, right bang in the middle. We're a few hours away from Dubai, a few hours away from London, Europe's here on our doorstep. So, Cyprus, in that sense, has so much to offer families, obviously not just traders, but families like that just want to improve their quality of life, the diet, the Mediterranean diet. I mean, the list can go on. But from a trader's point of view as well, it's, yes, like you're saying, that 90% of retention that that you're able to kind of take, but also being able to set all these infrastructures up as a trader. It's a very simple structure. You'll be able to, if you're here, you can have EU access and also potential EU passports, no remittance traps, long-term security. It's almost like a tick box that just doesn't end for myself. But maybe that's me just being biased
Yeah,
on that side. But yeah.
I mean, I think to your point on the lifestyle, an incredible diversified school system. Some incredible schools where you go from high-end British curriculum, people who get scholarships to top universities across Europe, in the US, to school systems where are more kind of alternative. There's a forest school, Waldorf education, Steiner type schools, and so it caters for that spectrum of what parents are looking for in children. But what's really interesting, we have a trader. We can't call him junior anymore. He's probably like leaping into the fringes of being a senior. He's now a trader that's been trading, 4 or 5 years now, and he's up for the last 12 months, approximately $1 million. Whereas a more senior trader has to make approximately $3 million. So he's proven, and we've had a trader, our lead trader, have a $1.5 million day. So we are proving as a team, as opposed to what happened in Gibraltar and Dubai, we're proving that there is this ecosystem of performance within a climate in Cyprus that you can perform in a warm tax jurisdiction. In a climate where our traders can go and, as you mentioned, to your point, rejuvenate on weekends, go play golf and smell, hit a 3-wood where they're looking at the view of the sea, of the Mediterranean Sea, and smelling that fresh sea air, where they can go to the beach with their kids in the morning before school or at the end of the day. And so cultivating that type of rejuvenation protocols on weekends, and then grinding it hard at the screen from Monday to Friday. And this is what's so incredible, is that now as a team, because it was, we were super aware when we first arrived here, and the collector has been instrumental to ensuring that there is a professional standard that needs to be adhered to if we are going to compete with the performance levels of your London, of your New York, of your Chicago, but then the differential where you're actually in more ownership of your financial future. That all that hard work, and sometimes in the West, we just become used to. We become used to just paying certain levels of taxes. We become used to that whatever we made, most of it, we don't see. Now, if there are powerful social systems, if there are powerful infrastructures that government put in place, but that is collapsing in the West. And so kind of taking ownership of how you govern your own finances and money, and having sovereignty of your own money. A junior senior trader who's now made $1 million in 12 years, man, you have to make over 3 million in New York, even more in New York, and approximately 3 million in London, to have the same performance as a trader who's making $1 million over here. And so, yeah, on the bottom line, and so that's massive, and importantly is anyone who's watching this video is still, before you make the move, ensure that you're plugging into that. When you go and say, oh, Cayman's looks amazing, Monaco looks incredible, Malta has a fairly good tax, not as advantageous as Cyprus, but there are some regions in in Europe that are tax efficient, especially on non-doms. I think there's a good one in Italy, and Greece too. But the very important question: are you surrounding yourself in a team that you can grow with? Because without a team, it is much more challenging, and you're more at the mercy of your own little lazy vices of, oh, it's been a tough day, let's go swim in the ocean. Whereas with those around, you say, oh no, there's Powell speaking in half an hour. Oh, there's a setup over here. There's little subtle nuances that all those little communication tactics on the floor enhance that individual who's plugged in to a team.
To me, that nucleus for me is the biggest powerful force that we have in Cyprus. I'm very proud to be a part of that from the very top, to our the collector and all our top team of live traders, all the way down to our absolute brand new grads walking through the door, fresh faced, absolutely green, ready to start the the 6-week career program and hopefully move on towards the blueprint, and keeping that strict level of professionalism that you're saying has to be there. And that's why I believe Cyprus, like what you're saying, has been so pivotal for people to be able to do that move and successfully do it, because you're in that system.
And on top of that, I think we've gone to to say is that it's incredibly English friendly. So it's multicultural. It has people from all around the world, moving here, and so the advantage of that for business, but as a trader, it almost becomes, why am I giving so much of my money away when I can be a part of a team in an effective tax jurisdiction? And these are important considerations, as you get older as a trader, and there's that money that, you are foregoing that kind of is towards your retirement, is towards, looking after your kids' education in the future. And because the markets are markets have time, and our form isn't consistent every single year. We've got traders who've been doing it for 2 decades, making money every year. But there is that time when, you want to step the foot off the accelerator, and have you taken as much money for yourself without giving it away into a system that maybe you might not receive it back in the social benefits that are possible.